Nathan Carter never expected his life to change that night. As a human exchange student on Zelvarus Prime, an intergalactic academy where students from hundreds of alien species studied, he had learned to keep his head down. Humans were rare here, and while most aliens treated him with curiosity, some saw him as weak, an outsider. He didn't mind. He just wanted to study, finish his program, and go back home. But fate had different plans. It was late, the twin moons casting a silver glow over the academy gardens. Nathan had just finished studying in the library and was walking back to his dorm when he heard a strange noise from a nearby alley. A sharp gasp, followed by hurried footsteps. Someone was running. Then he saw her. A girl, no, an alien, was sprinting towards him, her long, dark robes torn and her silver-blue skin covered in scratches. Her breathing was labored, her violet eyes wide with fear. Before Nathan could react, she stumbled and fell right in front of him. "Help! Me?" she gasped. Nathan hesitated for only a second before he noticed something else. Shadows moving behind her. 3 figures, cloaked in black, moving fast, their glowing weapons humming in the air. Nathan didn't know who she was, but one thing was clear: she was in danger. Without thinking, he grabbed her arm. "Come on." She looked at him in shock, but he didn't wait. Pulling her to her feet, Nathan turned and ran, leading her down a different path. He had spent months learning every shortcut and hidden passage in this academy. And now, he used that knowledge to escape. Behind them, the pursuers shouted in an alien language. Nathan didn't understand the words, but the sharp, aggressive tone was enough to tell him what he needed to know. They wanted her. They wanted her badly. Nathan pushed forward, his heart pounding. He could hear their footsteps closing in. His dorm wasn't far now. If he could just get there. A plasma bolt whizzed past his head, striking the wall beside him. Damn it. He cursed, pulling the girl behind him as they reached the dorm entrance. He slammed his hand on the door panel. Denied. He gritted his teeth. Security protocols. It wouldn't let an unauthorized person in. The girl, still panting, reached out and pressed her hand on the panel beside his. The scanner flashed green, and the door slid open. Nathan barely had time to process why she had access before they both dove inside. The door hissed shut behind them, locking out their pursuers. Silence. Nathan turned to the girl, who was clutching her side, still breathing heavily. Up close, she looked different, regal, like someone important. "Who are you?" he asked. She took a deep breath, then looked him in the eye. "I am Princess Gyra of the Valeri Empire, and you just saved my life." He looked at the silver-skinned alien girl sitting on the floor of his dorm, breathing heavily. She didn't look like a princess right now. Her robes were torn, her hair was messy, and there was fear in her violet eyes. But there was also something else. Determination. Strength. Nathan took a deep breath. "Princess of what?" "The Valeri Empire," she said, her voice soft but firm. Nathan wasn't an expert on galactic politics, but he had heard of the Valeri. A powerful empire, one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations. Their royalty rarely left their homeworld. If one was here, hiding, running from pursuers, that meant trouble. Big trouble. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, why were those guys chasing you?" Gyra winced, holding her side. "Because they want to remove me. My own royal council has betrayed me. They sent assassins to kill me before I could claim my throne." Nathan frowned. "So, they don't want a princess. They want a puppet," she replied bitterly. "Someone they can control. I refuse to be that. So, they decided to get rid of me." Nathan let out a slow breath. He had a fugitive alien princess in his room. If anyone found out, he would probably be arrested, or worse. Still, he had seen the fear in her eyes when she was running. She didn't deserve this. He sighed. "All right, you're safe for now. But what's the plan? You can't just stay here forever." She hesitated. I don't know. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You don't have a plan. She glared at him. I wasn't expecting to be hunted like an animal. I barely escaped the palace. My ship was destroyed. My allies have gone silent. I had no choice but to come here. Nathan rubbed his temples. Great. Now he was harboring a lost princess with no escape plan. A loud beep interrupted his thoughts. His holopad flashed, a campus-wide alert. Security notice. A fugitive alien has been reported near the academy. If spotted, report immediately. Do not engage. Dangerous individuals may be present. Nathan looked at Shira. Her face paled. They're searching for me, she whispered. Nathan's mind raced. If security scanned the dorms, they would find her. He needed to hide her. Fast. Get up, he said. What? You can't stay here. We need to find you a disguise and move before they start checking rooms. Shira looked unsure. Why are you helping me? Nathan shrugged. Guess I have a thing for saving princesses. A small, surprised smile flickered across her lips. Then she nodded. Nathan grabbed his bag and handed her a spare jacket. Come on, Your Highness. Time to disappear. Nathan didn't waste any time. He tossed a hooded jacket at Shira. Put this on. Hide your face. She hesitated, then slicked it over her torn robes. The oversized jacket swallowed her frame, but it was better than nothing. She pulled the hood low over her face, hiding her silver blue skin and glowing violet eyes, the biggest giveaways of her alien identity. Nathan checked his holopad again. The security alert was still active. The academy was on lockdown. Guards were searching every dorm. He cursed under his breath. We have to go. Now. Shira nodded, tightening the jacket around her. Where? Nathan thought fast. The maintenance tunnels. They ran under the academy, connecting different buildings. Most students didn't know about them, but Nathan had found a way in weeks ago while exploring. If they could reach the tunnels, they could escape without being seen. He cracked open the door, checking the hallway. Clear. Stay close and act normal, he whispered. They stepped out, walking fast, but not running. Security drones hovered near the ceilings, scanning students' faces as they passed. Nathan forced himself to stay calm. If he looked nervous, they would get caught. They turned a corner and almost ran straight into two guards. Nathan's heart stopped. The guards were checking IDs, scanning every student. They were only a few feet away. Shira tensed beside him, her breathing quickening. If they scanned her, it was over. Thinking fast, Nathan did the only thing he could. He grabbed Shira's hand. Kiss me. Her eyes widened. What? Just do it, he hissed. Before she could argue, he pulled her close and tilted her head up, just as the guards looked their way. Shira gasped softly as their lips touched, but Nathan didn't focus on that. He kept his eyes half closed, pretending to be lost in the moment. The guards scoffed and looked away. Ugh, another lovesick couple, one muttered. Keep moving. They walked past without scanning them. As soon as they were gone, Shira pushed him away, her face burning purple. What was that? She hissed, her voice a mix of shock and something else. Nathan smirked, distracting the guards. You're welcome. She crossed her arms. You could have warned me. No time, he said, grabbing her hand again. Come on, we're not safe yet. Still flustered, Shira followed him down a side hall. They reached a maintenance hatch, hidden behind old equipment. Nathan pried it open and waved her in. She hesitated for only a second before crawling inside. Nathan followed, pulling the hatch closed behind them. They were safe, for now. But the hunt wasn't over yet. The tunnels were dark, with only a few dim lights flickering along the walls. The air was stale, thick with the scent of metal and old machinery. Nathan led the way, his footsteps echoing softly on the concrete floor as Shira followed closely behind. Every now and then, she glanced over her shoulder, her eyes sharp and alert. She had no idea where they were heading, but Nathan seemed to know these tunnels well. She felt both safe and uneasy in his company. The fear of being hunted, of having her life in danger, weighed heavily on her. But with Nathan, she somehow felt protected. They walked for what seemed like hours, taking twists and turns, until Nathan finally stopped in front of a small room. An abandoned storage area. He pushed open a creaky door and motioned for Jaira to go inside. As she stepped into the room, Jaira looked around. There was nothing but old crates and some dusty equipment. The walls were bare, and the only sound was the faint hum of distant machinery. It felt like a world away from the rest of the academy. Nathan closed the door behind them and slid down against the wall, exhaling deeply. They were safe for now. Jaira moved to sit beside him. "How do you know about these tunnels?" she asked, her voice soft. Nathan chuckled lightly. "I like exploring. This academy is huge. I figured there had to be a way to get around without anyone noticing." She nodded slowly. "You've been a great help, more than I could ever expect from a stranger." Nathan glanced at her, meeting her eyes for the first time since they'd hidden away. There was something different about her now. Despite the fear and the danger, Jaira seemed more human, more real. The regal distance she had earlier was gone, replaced with something he couldn't quite name. "You're not just a princess, are you?" Nathan said, his voice gentle. "You're a person too." Jaira looked away for a moment, her fingers playing nervously with the edge of her jacket. "I try to be, but sometimes the title gets in the way." She paused before looking at him again. "I'm supposed to be a leader, someone others look to for strength, but I don't feel strong. Not right now." Nathan gave her a reassuring smile. "Being strong isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared." He shrugged. "I may not be a prince, but I know that much." Jaira studied him for a moment, as though seeing him in a new light. "You're right. I never thought about it like that before." A silence fell between them, comfortable but tense. Jaira shifted and looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. "You're putting yourself at risk by staying with me." Nathan's expression softened. He had been wondering that too. "I don't know. Maybe I just couldn't walk away." "You're not like the others, Jaira. You don't deserve to be hunted." She looked at him again, eyes wide with surprise. Then, without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Nathan nodded. It wasn't much, but it felt like enough. For the first time in days, they both allowed themselves to relax, even if just for a moment. The weight of the galaxy pressing down on them seemed a little lighter. They were in this together now, and together they might just have a chance. The air in the storage room felt even heavier the next morning. Nathan had barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of what was happening outside these walls. Jaira, too, seemed restless, though she tried to mask it with quiet composure. They both knew the calm they had was only temporary. The hunters were still out there. Nathan sat on the edge of a broken crate, staring at the small holopad in his hand. Security updates flashed across the screen. Princess Jaira still missing, suspected to be in hiding near the academy. He cursed under his breath. The entire academy was on high alert. Every hallway, every corner was being searched. There was no way they would stay hidden for long. Jaira stood up, her eyes scanning the dusty room. "We can't stay here. They'll find us eventually." Nathan looked at her, his expression tight with frustration. "I know. I'm trying to figure out a way out of here without getting caught." He stood up, pacing. "But we can't just walk out the front door. The guards are everywhere." Just then, the sound of distant footsteps reached their ears. Nathan froze, motioning for Jaira to stay quiet. He listened intently as the footsteps grew closer, stopping right outside their door. His heart pounded in his chest. "This is it," he thought. They were about to be found. But as the footsteps moved on, he realized something else. It was too quiet, too deliberate. The footsteps hadn't been a random patrol. Someone had been looking for them. Someone who knew exactly where they were. Nathan exchanged a tense glance with Jaira. Someone tipped them off. Jaira's eyes widened in realization. But who? We've been so careful. Nathan's mind immediately went to the people he had interacted with at the academy. There was one person who had seemed a little too friendly, a little too eager to know about their plans. Jorvin, the alien noble from the academy. He had always seemed curious about Nathan and Jaira's relationship. Too curious. Nathan cursed under his breath. It was Jorvin. I should have known. Jaira looked at him, disbelief written across her face. Are you sure? I'm not certain, but he's the only one who knew too much. He had been asking questions about you since you arrived here. I think he's in on this. Before Jaira could respond, the door to their hiding place suddenly creaked open. Both of them spun around, hearts racing. It wasn't Jorvin. It wasn't the enforcers. Standing in the doorway was a familiar face, a student from the academy, Kara. Her face was flushed with panic as she looked at Nathan and Jaira. They're coming. You need to move. Now. Nathan's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Who's coming? Kara's voice dropped to a whisper. Jorvin. He's the one who alerted the enforcers. He's working with them. He wants the reward for bringing in the princess. Jaira's face tightened with anger. That traitor. I should have known. Kara stepped closer, her eyes darting around the room. You don't have much time. They're closing in. I can get you out, but you need to trust me. Nathan hesitated. Could he trust Kara? Her sudden appearance seemed too convenient. But then again, if she was telling the truth, she could be the only ally they had left. We don't have much of a choice, Nathan said, meeting Jaira's gaze. Let's go. With Kara leading the way, they slipped out of the storage room and into the shadows, moving quickly but quietly. Nathan's mind raced. Jorvin's betrayal was a blow, but it also gave them one final chance. They just needed to escape before they were cornered. And maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tables on their enemies. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly ahead as Kara led the way, her steps quick but cautious. Nathan and Jaira followed closely behind, staying as silent as possible. Every time they rounded a corner or passed through a narrow passage, Nathan felt his heart race. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even though Kara assured them they were moving safely. We have to get to the hangar, Kara said in a low voice, glancing back over her shoulder. It's the only place they won't expect us to go. There's a ship there I can use to get you off-world. Jaira nodded, her expression tense. But the enforcers will be all over the hangar by now. How can we get through? Kara's lips curled into a small, confident smile. Leave that to me. Nathan couldn't help but wonder. Could they trust her? After all, Kara had just appeared out of nowhere, warning them about Jorvin's betrayal. Something didn't sit right about it. But at this point, they had no other choice. If they stayed in the tunnels any longer, the chances of getting caught were too high. As they moved deeper into the maze-like underground network, Nathan noticed something strange. The usual hum of the academy's systems, the ventilation, the lights, had gone silent. Everything felt too still. He slowed his pace, glancing around warily. What's wrong? Jaira asked, her voice barely a whisper. Something's off, Nathan muttered, his eyes scanning the shadows. Kara didn't seem to notice the change. She moved ahead with purpose, her movements smooth, like someone who had walked these paths 100 times before. But Nathan couldn't shake the unease in his gut. He trusted her, but was it possible that she had a hidden agenda? Just as he was about to speak up, a loud clank echoed through the tunnels ahead. Kara froze, her body stiffening as she turned back to face them. Stay here, she whispered urgently. Don't move. Before Nathan could react, Kara slipped around a corner, disappearing into the darkness. He exchanged a look with Jaira. What now? The sound of footsteps grew louder. Too loud. Nathan's pulse quickened. Someone was approaching, and it wasn't just one person. He could hear the distant hum of multiple voices, moving in sync. The enforcers were getting closer. Jaira gripped his arm. We can't just hide. They'll find us. We don't have a choice. Nathan glanced around, then spotted a nearby maintenance closet. He pulled her toward it, his mind racing. They couldn't outrun the enforcers, not in these tight tunnels. But if they could stay hidden long enough, they might slip by. The footsteps grew louder, echoing down the corridor. Nathan's breath caught in his chest as he held his breath, listening. The voices were closer now. They were right outside the closet. He could feel Jaira's pulse quickening against his arm. This was it. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. Nathan pressed his ear to the door, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Were they passing by? No. A sharp voice cut through the silence. They've been here. Searched the area. They couldn't have gone far. Nathan's heart sank. They were trapped. Before he could make a move, he heard a soft whisper. Kara's voice. Go now. I'll hold them off. Jaira's eyes widened. She's going to fight them. Nathan nodded, his mind made up. They couldn't just sit here and wait. They had to trust Kara. He pushed open the closet door, and they crept forward, staying in the shadows as best they could. Kara's voice echoed again, this time distant, drawing the enforcers away from their path. We've got to move fast, Nathan urged, pulling Jaira along. With Kara buying them time, they had a small window to escape. But they were still far from safe. The enforcers were closing in, and their time was running out. As they approached the hangar, Nathan's thoughts raced. Would Kara be able to hold off the enforcers long enough? Would they make it to the ship? Or would this be the end of their journey? One thing was certain. This was their last chance to escape, and they had to take it. The hangar loomed ahead, a massive, shadowy structure tucked away beneath the Academy's towering buildings. It was nearly empty, save for a few ships parked in the distant corners, their engines cold and silent. The place felt strangely quiet, almost like the calm before a storm. Nathan and Jaira kept close to the walls, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust that covered the floor. Kara had given them a head start, but Nathan knew they didn't have much time. The enforcers would be here soon. If they were going to get away, it had to be now. Stay low, Nathan whispered to Jaira, his voice barely above a breath. He motioned toward the far side of the hangar, where a small, sleek transport ship sat ready. It looked unremarkable, but it was their ticket to freedom. Jaira nodded, her violet eyes scanning the shadows. She was still on edge, every sense heightened, every sound amplified in the silence. It was hard to believe that just hours ago, she had been living her life as a royal. Now she was running for her life. As they neared the ship, Nathan turned to make sure they weren't being followed. No sign of the enforcers yet, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He had a feeling they were being watched. Jaira looked at him. We can't go far on this ship, she said quietly. It's too small, and we don't have enough fuel to make it to a safe planet. We'll figure that out later, Nathan replied. Right now, we just need to get out of here. They reached the ship, and Nathan began climbing into the cockpit. Jaira hesitated, then followed him. She looked out the window, her heart pounding as she spotted the faint glow of security lights moving toward them from the far end of the hangar. They're coming, she whispered urgently. Nathan didn't hesitate. He powered up the ship, the hum of the engines filling the cockpit. As soon as the systems came online, he turned the ship toward the hangar doors, ready to break out. But just as they were about to take off, a voice rang out from the shadows behind them. Leaving so soon, Princess? Nathan's heart sank as he spun around to see Jorvin stepping into the light. His expression was cold, his hands casually clasped behind his back. He wasn't alone. Two enforcers flanked him, their weapons drawn, and aimed directly at the ship. Jaira's breath caught in her throat. Jorvin, you. He smiled, though it was far from friendly. I thought we had an understanding. I offer you protection, and you reward me with betrayal. I thought you'd appreciate the opportunity I gave you, Princess. Nathan clenched his fists. What's your game, Jorvin? You just sell out your own people for a little power. Jorvin's smile faded, replaced by an icy sneer. It's not about power, human. It's about survival. And you, unfortunately, are in the way. The enforcers took a step forward, their weapons aimed squarely at Nathan and Jaira. Surrender now, one of them commanded. You don't stand a chance. Jaira's eyes flared with anger. You don't know who you're dealing with. Nathan's heart raced. They couldn't stay here. He had to do something. Then, without warning, he slammed the ship's engines into full throttle. The ship surged forward, kicking up a cloud of dust as it raced toward the hangar doors. Jorvin and the enforcers barely had time to react. As the ship flew toward the open door, Nathan braced for impact. He could see the enforcers reaching for their weapons, but it was too late. The ship broke through the hangar doors with a deafening crash, sending shards of metal flying into the night air. They were out. But the chase was far from over. The small ship rocketed through the night sky, its engines roaring as Nathan guided it away from the academy. The lights of the campus grew smaller, fading into the distance as they ascended higher, toward the stars. But as the adrenaline from their escape started to wear off, Nathan's thoughts were clouded with uncertainty. Jaira sat beside him, her face pale from the rush. She hadn't said a word since they'd broken through the hangar doors, her eyes fixed on the view outside. We did it, Nathan said, his voice shaky. We're free. Jaira didn't respond immediately. Instead, she placed a hand over her heart, her eyes closed as though she were trying to steady herself. After a moment, she opened her eyes and turned to him. I don't feel free, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. We're not out of danger yet. Nathan sighed, knowing she was right. Even as they soared into the unknown, there was still a part of him that didn't believe they had escaped. The enforcers were relentless, and Jorvin's betrayal had been the final blow. But they had made it this far, and that had to count for something. We need to find a safe place, Nathan said, glancing at the coordinates on the navigation screen. Somewhere off the grid, far from the Empire. Jaira nodded. I know a place. An old ally. If we can reach him, he'll help us. Nathan set the course, the engines purring smoothly now that they were clear of the Academy's defenses. But just as the tension began to ease, an alert flashed across the ship's console. Incoming vessels detected. Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't need to look at the radar to know who it was. Jorvin had sent reinforcements. Get ready, Nathan muttered, his fingers dancing over the controls. The enemy ships were closing in fast. He had to make a decision, and he had to make it now. We're going to have to fight. Jaira's voice was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes. Nathan looked at her, surprised. You don't want to run. Jaira's eyes narrowed. I'm done running. My people think I'm weak because I've never fought for what's mine. But I'm not weak, Nathan. I won't let anyone take me again. Her voice held a quiet strength that sent a chill through him. Nathan had always known there was more to Jaira than her royal title, but seeing her resolve now, it was clear that she was more than just a princess. She was a warrior in her own right. We're in this together, Nathan said, gripping the controls. But we need to move fast. We'll outrun them if we can. Jaira nodded, her gaze focused ahead. They'll be on us in minutes. We can't outrun them forever, but we can make them regret chasing us. As the enemy ships closed in, Nathan's hand tightened around the controls. They weren't just running anymore. They were fighting, and he was ready. The first blast came from behind them, sending the ship lurching forward. Nathan's hands flew over the console, returning fire as he quickly turned the ship to dodge another blast. Jaira braced herself, her eyes sharp as she kept watch. "You take the controls," Nathan said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I'll cover us." Jera moved swiftly, taking over the ship's navigation as Nathan began firing back. The ship's small turrets fired in quick bursts, aiming at the pursuing ships with surprising accuracy. Despite the odds, Nathan could feel the tide turning. Jera, now fully in control, gripped the ship's wheel with both hands, her focus unwavering. "They're trying to flank us. We need to make a sharp turn, or we'll be sitting ducks." Nathan nodded. "Do it." She made a sudden tight turn, sending the ship into a steep dive, barely missing a volley of enemy fire. The pursuing ships struggled to keep up, unable to match the agility of Nathan's ship. "We're almost there," Jera said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Nathan glanced at her, seeing the warrior inside her. He knew then that no matter what happened, they would fight together. And somehow, that gave him hope. The battle raged on as Nathan and Jera fought to stay one step ahead of the pursuing ships. Their small craft zipped and darted through the void, narrowly dodging enemy fire. Nathan's hands were shaking, but he kept a firm grip on the controls, his mind focused. Jera, on the other hand, was calm, her hands steady, as she guided the ship through twists and turns that even the enemy pilots couldn't keep up with. The enemy ships were relentless, but Nathan could see their frustration growing. They were losing ground. Jera's knowledge of evasion tactics was saving them. She was a born leader, but in moments like this, she was showing just how skilled she was under pressure. "We're losing them," Nathan said, his voice full of hope. He checked the radar. The enemy ships were starting to fall behind. But there was still one problem: the fuel. They had enough to get out of this fight, but once they cleared the enemy, they needed to find somewhere to land and refuel. Nathan didn't know where that place would be. The galaxy was vast, and the allies Jera had once known were few and far between. They couldn't risk landing anywhere that might give away their position. Jera glanced over at him. "We're almost there. I'll make sure we reach the safe zone before our fuel runs out. You focus on keeping us intact." Nathan nodded, his confidence in her growing. They had been through so much together already. She had already saved him once, and now he was going to do everything he could to save her. Ahead of them, the enemy ships were finally beginning to give up the chase. They couldn't keep up with Jera's quick turns and sharp maneuvers. For the first time in hours, Nathan allowed himself to relax just slightly. Jera took a deep breath, her grip on the controls loosening. "We should be safe now. They're pulling back." Nathan let out a sigh of relief. "Good, but where do we go from here?" "I know a place," Jera said, a determined look crossing her face. "I have an old ally, a former general who owes me a favor. He's far off the beaten path. No one will find us there." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "A general? Who are we talking about here?" Jera smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. "One of the few I can trust. He's kept his word before. If we can get to him, he'll help us." They didn't have much time to waste. Nathan took a last look at the radar. The enemy had given up the chase. They were safe for now. But just as Nathan began to relax, an alert flashed on the ship's console. "New signal detected." The voice of the ship's AI sounded cold and mechanical. "What now?" Nathan asked, looking at the screen. Jera leaned forward, squinting at the blinking coordinates. "It's not the enemy," she said, her voice soft but certain. "It's him, my ally. He's coming for us." Nathan's eyes widened. "Your ally?" Jera nodded, the weight of the moment settling over her. "He owes me, but this will be the real test. If he really comes through for us, then he will have proven that loyalty is worth more than anything else." As they flew toward the new coordinates, Nathan could sense the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about loyalty. Loyalty to each other, to the cause they were fighting for, and to the people who had once believed in Jera. The next few hours would tell them whether Jaira's faith in her ally was well placed and whether their journey together would continue. But one thing was certain: they had made it this far, together, and whatever happened next, they would face it side by side. The ship glided smoothly through the void of space, following the coordinates that Jaira had set. Nathan sat in the cockpit, his eyes fixed on the distant stars. The tension from the fight still lingered in his muscles, but it was slowly fading. They had made it. Jaira sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap, staring out at the stars with a quiet expression. Despite everything they'd been through, there was something peaceful about the way she looked now. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, she could finally breathe. Nathan glanced at her. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. She turned to him and smiled, though it was faint. "I'm okay. For the first time in a long time, I feel like we might have a chance." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. They had been running, hiding, fighting. But now, they had made it. They were heading to an ally of hers, someone who might be able to give them the help they needed. "I don't know what will happen next," Nathan said, his voice full of uncertainty. "But I know this much: I'll stand by you. I'm in this for the long haul." Jaira's eyes softened. "Thank you, Nathan. I never thought I would meet someone like you, someone who isn't just looking for what they can gain. You've risked everything to help me." Nathan shrugged. "I don't know why I did it. Maybe because you're not just a princess, Jaira. You're someone who deserves to be free." Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of the galaxy seemed to lift from her shoulders. "You're right. Maybe I am more than just a princess. But I don't want to be someone's pawn anymore. I want to make a difference. I want to lead, but not from a throne. I want to lead by example, like you have." Nathan smiled, a genuine smile that felt new, even to him. "You're already leading, Jaira, in your own way." He paused, then added, "And maybe, just maybe, we can show others what true strength looks like." As they approached the coordinates, a new sense of purpose filled the cockpit. They were still far from safe, and they didn't know what awaited them at their destination, but there was something different in the air now. Hope. The stars ahead grew brighter, signaling that they were nearing their destination. Jaira leaned forward, her eyes scanning the radar. "We're almost there." Nathan adjusted the controls, keeping the ship on course. The calm before the storm was almost over. Their lives were about to change again, and they both knew it. But in that moment, they were not just a princess and a human. They were allies, partners in this fight for survival. The ship slowly descended toward the planet's surface, a lush green world that seemed untouched by the chaos they had left behind. The air felt fresh, and the ground below them was covered in forests and hills. It looked like a place where they could find peace, at least for a while. As the ship touched down, Jaira turned to Nathan, her eyes filled with gratitude. "This is it, Nathan. We're safe, for now." Nathan nodded, his heart swelling with a sense of pride. "We made it this far, together. Now, we take the next step." They both stepped out of the ship, the planet's air cool and fresh against their skin. As they looked around, Jaira placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder, a quiet promise in her eyes. "We're just getting started," she said, her voice filled with determination. And Nathan, feeling the strength of their bond, knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. A new beginning was here, and it was theirs to shape.